wanted to, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the First 50 Coalition. I think some of you may know I was president of the league for a year. I think it was in 2016. I was trying to figure, I think I rolled off in April of 2016. And so this was what happened after that when I had a little bit more free time. And so I just want to talk about the First 50 Coalition. So sorry, a lot of text, but I sort of wanted to go over a timeline. Really what happened is I rolled off, I was no longer president, and then 2016 happened, the election happened, and I'm like, I need to do something where I can make a difference, which is in my community. And so it started with a lunch with Chris Castro from Ideas for Us. As some of you may know, he is also, at the time he was Assistant Sustainability Director. He's now Sustainability Director for the City of Orlando. And so we had lunch, I'm like, well, what can we do to do something about climate? And at that time, even in the City of Orlando, you have to be careful about saying climate change. I think everybody's saying climate change now. People can call it what it is. But the idea that I had was that I really wanted it to be a broad civic group. And the reason I wanted to do that is because, well, first of all, climate has health impacts. It, our houses, the storms that we're having, the wildfires, there's all impact us. It's not just climate. And what happens is you kind of get put in a bucket because everybody expects environmentalists to be worried about the environment. They don't necessarily expect the NAACP to. But it's, climate impacts are more likely to affect low-income people of color than anyone else because they usually live in the most vulnerable areas. So Chris and I got together and we're like, what can we do? And this idea is we're going to do this coalition. It's going to have a whole bunch of people from across different kinds of civic organizations. Focus on Orlando as a regional leader because Orlando often does set the stage for the rest of the community, for the rest of the region. And now I think we're even playing on the southeastern United States, maybe even the national stage. And we started by saying we're going to get the mayor to pledge 100% renewable energy. So that was March 2017. We got a mayor's pledge pretty quickly. We moved together to get a letter and support, and then we had our first organized meeting, and that really this idea is we were going to have 3 to 4 what we called Goldilocks goals. So those were goals that were not so ambitious they would never happen, but they were not so small they wouldn't have an impact. And really, again, trying, all these organizations are working on lots of different kinds of things. And so where do we have this intersection of interest that really fits this mold? And so so we came up, we were really focusing on becoming the community we wanted to be. That was really, it was like a positive thing. And at that point we started focusing on 100% commitment from the City of Orlando. And so we had letters of support. Then we had the announcement of the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. We met with all of the city council members, and so when we turned out a huge crowd for their meeting on doing a pledge to 100% renewable energy, it was a unanimous vote. And so was anybody here at that meeting? It was awesome. It was awesome. I mean, they kept saying, you don't all have to speak, but everybody, yeah, you can come on here, promise, because there were like 40 or 50 people there, but everybody really needed to talk about why this was so important and why they felt so good. So it was a really joyous meeting. And I was walking to the elevator afterwards, and someone I didn't even know looked at me and they said I needed that win. And so that was the goal, was really to get some positive momentum. So then we've done some other things, but we also had, so every year we bring coalition members together, we kind of decide on what are our top 3 goals that we can work on together. And then we do limited, because I have very limited capacity, limited actions together where we have this intersection. And so this is just some of our members. The sort of core founding members are Ideas for Us and the League. And I have to say, I think you all know this, but the League's role in this is really important. The League is seen very broadly in this community as a nonpartisan, fair organization, and we are also very respected. So having the League as a leader in this coalition brings that sense of we've got to listen, right? And then Ideas for Us, which is a local grown organization, very focused on sustainability and solutions for, there are very solutions focused organization that actually started at UCF in a dorm room. So they are a really important partner. Sierra, which Raquel represents, also a key partner with us, and then the NAACP. Those four groups do a lot of the leadership, but then we have all these other different kinds of people, including the Interfaith Council and others. And so having this broad coalition, when we send, this is actually a screenshot from a letter we sent with all those logos at the bottom, and that kind of makes the city commissioners stand up and pay attention, because it's coming from a broad cross sector of the community. So the first year, again, it's like sort of like the coalition meets. We talk through all sorts of goals, and then we vote, using little dots. It's dot democracy, it's sometimes called. And so the first year is the pledge to 100% renewable energy, and we have achieved that. We also have been interested in energy efficiency and what's called a just transition, which is when you think about when people first started talking about climate, we do talk about solar and hybrid cars, which are really important, but there's also only a certain segment of our society that can afford that. And also there is some fear, some of which has been purposely perpetuated, this idea that basically rich people will get solar and plug-in cars, and poor people will be left paying for the grid. And so we have to really figure out, how is a sustainable community helpful for everybody in our community, not just the folks that can afford the very important things that we do when we can, but what does it mean for someone in Paramore who rents a house? How can we help make sure that they understand how they're impacted and give them a voice? And one of the biggest things we can do for them is, for folks, lower income folks, and renters and that kind of thing, is energy efficiency. For a lot of reasons. One is it helps them economically. There's new research that shows that weatherization can help health very strongly, especially things like asthma and cardiorespiratory illnesses, which there's a higher percentage of that in our low-income and minority communities. So making sure that just transition happens, and that everybody benefits.
Just to add up to that, the NAACP has a section that's called environmental, climate, and justice, that they focus nationally. And just to add to what Sara said, they have a report that's said by a pulmonologist that says that an increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere affects, an increase of asthma, especially in low-income communities. So just to add up to that, it's not, there's actually research behind it.
Yeah, so I actually also, in my work life, work with the Florida Clinicians for Climate Action. And as the earth heats up, there's a number of things that happen in terms of how pollution gets processed, but also just higher heat days mean people go through their asthma medicine faster, and then they run out, and they can't afford a refill. And so there's lots of complications around that. And so there's already a higher incidence of respiratory diseases and asthma in low-income communities of color, and then climate change is just exacerbating that. So just helping spread that story, but also a hopeful story of we could do, green energy is good for everybody. Nobody doesn't want clean air and clean water, so helping spread that word. And so then year 2, we still kept the energy efficiency, and then we wanted to promote a ban on the use of plastic straws, plastic bags, and styrofoam. And so this has always been a goal, closing the coal units. So when we first started, I know there were a lot of people in this community who had fought really hard to close the coal plants. When we first started, this seemed like a really long shot. We're feeling like it's going to happen soon, and hopefully sooner rather than later. So I just wanted to let you know that the League was represented in this film. I was actually in this film and somehow did not end up on the cutting room floor. But it's called From Paris to Pittsburgh. It is a documentary. You can go online. It's paristopittsburgh.org. It's a documentary that was it's a Bloomberg Philanthropy and National Geographic film, so it ran internationally. It was screened here at a screening hosted by Mayor Betty Dyer, who is also in the film. Basically what this film is showing is that cities have taken the leadership on climate action, cities and municipalities, because when we pulled out of the Paris Accords, a lot of cities across the country said we're not going to, and Orlando was featured as one of those cities that was part of this movement to move towards climate action and green energy, despite what was happening on the national front. So I think that you all can be really proud that the League, it's been shown, the League of Women Voters, I actually tried, yeah, it says Orange County too, that's been shown internationally, so you know, we're getting famous. And good to know. And then recently, the Climate Reality Project held a viewing of the film locally, and we got a good turnout for that too. So.
DPAC was nice.
Yeah, the first one was at DPAC, and then recently, it was a really big showing at the launch film with Mayor Betty Dyer, and then most recently we had a local showing at the Broadway United Methodist Church. Got it right? Yeah. Okay. So. What you can do, actually I have to, my timeline that I had of all the important events of what's happened in the timeline of the coalition should have included that, when did you join us, Raquel? Is this May?
Yeah, like 4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago, Raquel joined us. So she is a community organizer for Sierra's Beyond Coal campaign, and she is dedicating part of her time to helping the coalition, which I desperately need. I work full time, and that I do my best, but I am always a little too busy. And Raquel is amazing, and on top of things. And she actually she created this PowerPoint for me because she's like, Sara, yeah. So
just a little bit about myself. So the coalition's goal in closing the Stanton power plant or coal plant, that's where I jump in. So I'm part of this, I'm the new organizer for Sierra Club on the Beyond Coal campaign, and my goal will be to actually help transition from coal to solar and make sure that there is, as well, economic justice, people keep their jobs, and everybody will benefit from that. And the coalition has been great. The coalition already has a footprint, ecological footprint here in Orlando, putting pressure on the city and helping drive legislation that will actually be better for the city, sustainable legislation. So I'm really, really excited to be part of this and help organize it and see what we can do to actually make the one of the units retire as soon as next year. So.
Yeah, and so now that Raquel is on board and can help with sort of the organizing piece of the coalition, which I work also very closely with Susanna Randolph and with the Sierra Club and Beverly Neal from the NAACP, but that organizing piece was missing, and Raquel has stepped in. And the last 4 weeks have been the best weeks of this coalition in my experience. So what that means is that we now have capacity to wind up. So and we have been throughout. It's in the timeline, but we've been putting a lot of pressure on OUC when their general manager retired. We sat in on the interviews, and we sent a letter making sure that sustainability was part of that. We've been ongoing attending OUC meetings, and they are really surprised because they're not used to seeing people there, so it makes them a little comfortable, which is not a bad thing. And one of the things as a result of this, and the fact that Orlando also landed a big Bloomberg grant to help with sustainability activities is this roadmap. So oucroadmap.com. What that is OUC is doing what's called an energy, an ERP. I know what that stands for, but it's just escaping my mind. It'll come to me. But so basically what it is they're auditing all of their energy needs for the next 20 years. And so what the OUC roadmap is doing is it's asking you to get on there. It's about 15 minutes, so just sit down when you have a little bit of time, and it's asking you to rank reliability, affordability, and sustainability. And then they added the fourth one, which is they added a fourth one.
Affordability,
reliability, sustainability, and
affordability, reliability. No, affordability, reliability, sustainability.
There's more than 4.
There's 4 major ones. There's 4.
So, real quick, ERP is enterprise research planning.
Yeah, so basically they're setting their goals for the next 20 years. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, my husband had gotten that survey and he filled it out and he tried sending it in and it wouldn't go through. And he tried it several times and kind of manipulated things, and so it's like, okay. So we went to the hot topics and listened to that, and so he went home, okay, I'm gonna try this again, and it never would take.
Oh,
the
we
survey.
should call OUC and let them know that.
Yeah, cause it's
And
like.
we did it and it went through
And
fine.
it
Yeah,
It was
I
not a
think
So
problem.
maybe
Really?
refresh
Yeah.
it, maybe close out your browser and start it again.
Which browser
I
did
did.
did you try a couple browsers?
Or use a different
That was
browser.
Phil, that was my husband, and I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they write software specifically like for IE or something.
Yeah, they do. They
That's
have-
true.
it's
It's really
got-
bad.
like, yeah,
It's
it's
lazy
always like-
program.
I
I
don't know if
know,
you tried
yeah.
that or not.
So,
You have to
so let me
try.
tell you why this is important. And you know, obviously each one of you, everybody here will make their choice. So when we were at the OUC meeting, where resiliency,
Resiliency.
that's what they added. Thank you.
Did I say that?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Good for you. Yeah, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
So they added that. So one of the things to remember is that, anyway, what I think is important is that when you can think about affordability in two different ways. You can think about affordability as being the absolute lowest cost that I pay per kilowatt, like what's on my bill. But you know, affordability takes on a very different tone when you think about I might have coal ash dust in my yard and I'm worried about my kids getting cancer. What is the price tag on that? Or even there's more air pollution in the air, and there are deaths attributable to air pollution. The World Health Organization can quantify it worldwide how many people die just from air pollution, and that happens right here in our community. So how do you put a cost on that? An asthma attack, how much does an asthma attack cost if you have to go and be admitted to the emergency room? So just remembering when we're talking about affordability, it doesn't include any of those externalities of what that means when we're polluting the air in order to run electricity. So sustainability is obviously really important. I'm a little worried about the way that they are running, they're doing some community engagement right now on the way they're doing the questions. We've actually been engaged with OUC about this because how you ask a question about affordability will very much determine how people answer it, right? So if I did say, do you want the cheapest energy possible? Of course you want your utility bill low, but do you want to also pay for all these other problems, including increased hurricanes and all the other things we're dealing with because of climate change? So just being really careful about that and recognize the externalities that are part of that. So far I had heard that sustainability is number one, is what people are asking for in the city of Orlando. So really encourage you all to take that survey as well. As part of that as well, one of the things that we're really worried about as a coalition, so I'll back up just a little bit, which is that the First 50 did sponsor a study by a well-respected energy advisor who looked at publicly available documents, to look at the feasibility of closing down the 2 coal plants that are currently out at stand. There's 2 coal plants and 2 gas plants. And basically the study found that in their view, with what they could see with the documents that were publicly available, that Stanton 1, the oldest unit, could close down with next year. And it would not harm capacity, because we are actually over capacity. We sell power. The city of Orlando, the municipal utility sells power. So, so we as a coalition are pushing very hard to shut down those coal plants, but what we really don't want is to have that be an excuse, which is happening across the country, of then going ahead and investing more in natural gas.
Yes.
There's more and more evidence of how much gas and all the way that there's methane and other things escaping through the pipelines during the process, that it's got a much bigger carbon. It's, you know, everybody's supposed to be clean energy. It's a much bigger carbon footprint than we thought. So we want, we're really pushing for OUC to move fast towards more renewable energy, but not move so fast that means a transition to gas and an investment, because you know, if you invest hundreds of millions, you're gonna, and that's what's happening actually across the country, then you're gonna have gas for a long time. So we do think the coal plant number 1 can be shut down. We think number 2 with if most people in Orlando do vote that they want sustainability as number one, we have actually, Raquel just met with a commissioner who's on board, a city commissioner who's on board, so we've got a lot of momentum going, and so this is a little bit of a tricky period. But for, OEC is a utility, they're in the business of producing power, they're a business, so they would rather move slower rather than faster. We would rather have them move faster rather than slower, and it's the folks like you who show up when there's a meeting who make a difference. So I think, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any comments working with you? Because like for power, when you're on the open market buying power, your brownout times are in the middle afternoon when you're generating the most for solar and stuff. So actually the amount of money you're making is much better during a couple hour period in the middle of the day than it is at nighttime. So it could be argued economically that by putting up the solar array is actually cheaper because you're capturing the most expensive hours of the day, which is prime air conditioning time when humans are most awake. So economists would be really good to have. I keep on arguing with people about in the environmental community that we need economists.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
No, absolutely.
saving
That's where all the
bears and stuff is
decisions
nice,
get made,
but
right?
it's money.
Like how you calculate the ROI on energy efficiency if you do a 5-year,
Yeah, and
10-year.
distributed